Hello, my name is Netta Asner-Minster. I am a Jewish educator, and today I will be sharing about the Jewish life cycle from birth all the way to death in Judaism, starting with the circumcision and naming for baby girl ceremonies, to bar and bat mitzvah, to marriage and wedding customs in Judaism, and ending with death and mourning, and a little bit about the afterlife as well. Birth, it goes to bar bat mitzvah, marriage, death, and the afterlife, and that's the order that we will be doing here today as well. So we start with the birth of a child and the naming of a child. With boys and girls, it's a different ceremony, and I'll be going through briefly what each of those are. So first of all, with a boy, we have the ceremony of circumcision. In Hebrew, it's called a brit milah, which basically the boy is joining the covenant of the Jewish people by the circumcision itself, reminding us of Abraham, who received a circumcision and that way joined the covenant with God. And also the fact that this is the time that the baby boy receives a name. Up until this point, the baby does not have a name, and the circumcision will take place 8 days after the birth, if all is well and healthy with the baby. And if not, it will be afterwards. But we have at minimum waiting 8 days. During this time, the baby is not named. And the circumcision, the joining of the covenant, goes along with the naming of the baby. It's important to mention that Orthodox people in general, or people who are observant, have a mohel who does the circumcision, which means a person who is certified and trained to do the circumcision. However, if somebody decides to do it by a doctor in the hospital, it doesn't invalidate the circumcision, but it is more custom and common to do it in this setting, in this format, in the way the ceremony is built in this way. But again, it doesn't invalidate the circumcision if it is done in a hospital by a doctor. So what is the order of the ceremony of the Brit Milah? Well, first of all, the mother brings the baby to the ceremony, to the place where the ceremony is taking place, and usually passes it on to what is called a kvatel, which ideally is a couple who are married but do not have children yet, and this is considered to be a good sign for children to come and a nice gesture for a couple who just got married and do not have children yet for whatever reason. And then the couple passes it on to the father, and the father passes the baby on to what's called a sandak, a godfather, who's usually sitting in a large chair. We can see the large chair over here in the picture on the bottom. If the parents do not choose a godfather or a sandak of some kind, then the baby is placed on the pillow on the large chair. The purpose of the pillow is for the baby to be comfortable, that it is a large a surface that the baby is placed on, and again, comfortable for the process of the circumcision. Basically what happens is that usually, as you can see here, the baby is on the lap of the sandak, of what we call the godfather. The father is usually right there next to the mohel, next to the circumcision general, and the ceremony is pretty short. What you do is you actually have the circumcision. The father blesses on the fact that the boy is joining the covenant of the Jewish people of Abraham. And then you have the baby naming, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes you have some singing. Sometimes you have some sort of a sermon, what we call Dvar Torah, so words of Torah that are said in this context. But it all in all is a pretty short ceremony for the sake of the baby, because usually the idea is immediately afterwards to feed the baby and to soothe and to calm the baby down. And also because of the fact that they really try to not actually feed the baby beforehand, because of the circumcision, the process, and the procedure that are going to be going through. It is important to mention that part of the ceremony here is actually having what's called a seudat mitzvah, meaning a feast that is a mitzvah. What does that mean? That you eat bread and you celebrate and you do a proper feast and a meal after the ceremony with other guests to really mark this occasion. And the reason that we have the seudat mitzvah is because at the end of the meal, the grace after meals has particular additions that are added for the circumcision, for the ceremony, for the boy being added and been joining the covenant. And for the sake of the grace after meals and those additions, we're having the entire feast. It is very common to simply just do bagels and spreads because that's the easiest thing, and that's the way you add bread into the meal. But there are a variety of people who do a variety of things. I've been to a whole huge spread of meat and like that it was a really like fancy meal that they did post circumcision, but really it depends and it's a personal choice. Okay, so what about girls? So this is my daughter. Very shortly after I gave birth, she looks very different now, so I don't mind sharing the picture of her here. So basically, with baby girls, there really isn't an official ceremony that is supposed to be done. How do you name a baby girl though? So basically, the father has an aliyah to the Torah, which means he's called up to the Torah. And while he is blessing and saying the blessings, they say a special blessing for the woman who has just given birth, and a special blessing to name the new child, the new girl who was born. So unlike boys, we're very clearly waiting 8 days or more, depending on the health of the child, to name the baby officially. In this case, the girl can already be named the next Torah reading, which is either Shabbat, which we have the full Torah reading, or Monday and Thursday, which we do a shorter Torah reading for the upcoming week. So that way, if you give birth on a Wednesday, already Thursday morning, the baby can be named. And the name is only shared post the time that the father will have the aliyah. So for whatever reason, there's no synagogue nearby, and the father can only go to synagogue and name the baby later on, then you are technically and officially only supposed to say the name of the baby after that. In various communities, there's various customs regarding the baby naming and when that's done. But in general, that is the order and procedure of things. So the thing is that that's basically all you need for a baby girl naming. But today, you have people who want to do a ceremony like we did and do something special for the child that is a girl, even though there's no official ceremony that goes along with it. So what basically happens, and you'll see this process also again later on with the bat mitzvah, is that you really can do whatever you want, and it's really flexible, and it's a personal choice about how much you want to do or make it a ceremony for a baby girl. And this is within the Orthodox world. So I will share briefly what we did, and then I will go back to share about other options as well. So what did we do? So we said the Shechianu, the gratitude blessing, and the Thanksgiving blessing, which is usually said after I'm going through something that was difficult, like a surgery or a procedure or something of the sort. And Shechianu is just for the new event and the significant event that has come upon us. So those two blessings really go well with birth and just becoming first-time parents, etc. We explained her name. Then we had a mishaberach, which is a blessing that is said usually by a leader of the service. And it was a blessing for the mother and child and was done by a rabbi. Then we had family members who spoke, who shared their own experiences, and we also had a Dvar Torah, which is a sermon, which is words of Torah that are said in this context. And then we had the blessing of we blessed her at the end of the ceremony, and we had a song. So we were inspired by others, but all in all, we kind of created our own ceremony. So this is not something official. It's not something that's in books. These are things that are very much a part of Judaism. And very, obvious and makes sense and everything, but nobody has created an official ceremony. I will note that I'm sure there are people in the Orthodox world who would find this unnecessary and problematic because we kind of create our own ceremony. At the same time, all of these things kind of make sense regarding birth and are often said in different situations and relations and context, and we just brought it in together within this ceremony. Okay. So beyond that, what we did, some people just do, it's called Zevet Habat or Simchat Bat, which means a celebration of the daughter or happiness of the daughter. And it would be just a meal that family would come together and you would do some sort of celebration. People would come over, and that is that. However, it's important to mention that non-Orthodox denominations will in fact sometimes choose beyond the baby naming in the synagogue to do some sort of ceremony. So I'll just know that there are 2 ceremonies that I have found, and I'm sure there are more, again, because you have that flexibility to create whatever you want regarding a girl's ceremony versus a circumcision, which is very straightforward what's supposed to be there. And it's called Brit Bat and Talit ceremony. So Brit is the same word as circumcision, the idea of a covenant, that a girl is joining the covenant. And the Talit ceremony has to do with wrapping, giving a Talit. Basically, the idea is symbolically doing something that makes it clear the girl is also joining the covenant of the Jewish people. Because in non-Orthodox denominations, there is equal obligation that women can do whatever men can for 2 different reasons. In conservative, it's because of equal obligation, and in the Reform movement, because one can choose whatever they want to do no matter what. Whereas in Orthodoxy, there are very clear separations about who is obligated and in what. So those are the 2 ceremonies that do exist. Does everyone do it? No. Do people mix and choose and pick whatever they want? Yes. So with girls, it's a lot more flexible, like I mentioned. Again, with boys, more straightforward. So that is the first part of the Jewish life cycle that basically happens with the naming of a child, having them join the generations of Jewish people and joining the chain of the Jewish people, basically. Okay. And from this, we will go to bar and bat mitzvah. So we'll start with bar mitzvah and then get on to the bat mitzvah. So it is important to mention that according to the Talmud, according to the oral law already, that's from the 1st century, boys and girls have a particular age in which they become responsible for themselves. They become obligated in mitzvot and commandments that from that point onwards, they really are considered responsible adults, that they are in charge of themselves and their role within the Jewish people, and have a responsibility. So for girls, it is age 12. For boys, it is age 13. And that's already written in the Talmud, in the oral law, that's already placed there. So for boys and girls, that's set. It's already written no matter what. Up until this point in their child's life, they are not obligated in mitzvot. So that means if they miss something or they did a sin of some kind, we say that it's on the parents because the parents are supposed to educate, but they don't have that same obligation and responsibility as an adult. From this point onwards, they do. They're supposed to fast Yom Kippur. They're supposed to hear Megillah. They're supposed to light Hanukkah candles. Participating in Shabbat in whatever shape or form, praying either 3 times a day or once a day. So all of these things basically become a responsibility at age 12 or 13. So what exactly does a bar mitzvah include? So these are the components of the bar mitzvah, and it's important to mention what exactly is the obligation and what specifically happens religiously and versus what we also do today. So a few things basically happen upon bar mitzvah. So first and foremost, there's the obligation that a boy is supposed to be in services and supposed to be praying 3 times a day. And as such, they're able to be called up to the Torah. They're able to have what we call an aliyah. They're able to read Torah. They're able to lead services. And it counts because they are obligated. This is why, for example, the same thing applies to people who are converting. They're not able to be called up to the Torah. They're not be able to lead services, and because they're not obligated yet. So the same thing applies to a bar mitzvah boy, that now he is obligated, and now there's this expectation, and therefore he can do these things. So the one thing that you are supposed to do at a bar mitzvah is have an aliyah, being called to the Torah, and you say basically 2 blessings in the beginning and end of the Torah reading, and that's it. Okay, that is the obligation. That's what's supposed to happen. However, in Orthodox communities, it is pretty common for a boy to read their entire Torah portion. What does that mean, their Torah portion? So the week that you were born, that Shabbat, that's your Torah portion. So I was born the 3rd of Shvat, that's the Hebrew date, and my Torah portion is Bo, which is the 3rd Torah portion in Exodus. And forever, that is going to be my Torah portion. And for my bat mitzvah, that is the official date that I became obligated in mitzvot. Okay, we'll talk about you have to do it on that date. For boys, it is pretty obvious that they will be doing their bar mitzvah and reading the Torah and having the aliyah the week that they were born and on their Torah portion. So it's very clear that that's when it's supposed to happen. So again, in our Orthodox communities, it's pretty common for the boy to read their entire portion. And in addition, also to lead services of some kind, or to read the Haftarah, which is the portion from prophets that is added and connected. They're already pre-assigned and already, you can find it in any prayer book that has the readings, and they'll also have what's called the Haftarah, the portion from the prophets that goes alongside and together with the portion of the week. So they'll read that as well. And in addition, they might have a sermon, a Dvar Torah as well. Sometimes they also have something called a mitzvah project. And there's additional things that people do just to make this more significant, to make it more meaningful for the community and not only for oneself. But that is a personal choice, and that's not, again, obligated. So, and it also depends upon community, of course. So that's one. Then you have the tefillin, which are only, you start to put them upon bar mitzvah. So that's something you specifically get for your bar mitzvah. So that is the tefillin over here. And some communities also receive a talit, the prayer shawl. Not all communities, you basically will be giving as a gift or providing or for the bar mitzvah boy a talit. It is most common among Sfaradim and Hasidim. So meaning you have a group of Ashkenazim who don't give the talit, and my family is one of those. My brother did not get a talit upon bar mitzvah. When will he get one? Upon marriage. But Bezrat Hashem, all being well and everything. But that's the idea, that you get, when you are married, you get your talit from the family of the bride. The groom receives it. Usually also boys who received a talit for their bar mitzvah will receive also another one when they are married by the families, by the bride's family. But the idea is that now they're obligated. They have this talit that they bless on, and they use that, of course, whenever they're praying generally, and also upon leading services or reading the Torah or whatever. So what does someone do when they don't have? They still, if they're leading services and going up to the Torah and participating in a minyan, they still will use a talit. It just won't be theirs. So that's generally what's custom and common to do. And those are the three things that are religious obligations and things that happen surrounding the bar mitzvah. What about the party we have over here? Completely modern adaptation and like modern addition that's done today. And this, therefore, like, doesn't matter what day you do it, because it's not something, religious in any way, shape, or form. So if you wanted to do it a month later, or, whatever, 3 weeks later from the actual bar mitzvah date, that's no problem. And so often you sometimes have a gap between the Shabbat and the bar mitzvah party. Sometimes it's in the same week and it is all connected, but you have a choice in that case, in this situation. So that is the bar mitzvah. And now we get to bat mitzvah. So the obligations and expectation and very clear, like, organized ceremony that we have is different, again, because in Orthodoxy, really, it's just a transition from becoming somebody who is not obligated to somebody who is. And in non-Orthodox communities, this is of more significance because it is similar to the boys. So what exactly happened? So again, I'll mention in the Talmud, it says that from age 12, a girl is obligated. Now, I just want to note that for a long time throughout history, girls did not have any ceremony at all that was called a bat mitzvah, that they did something or celebrated or whatever. The first bat mitzvah that was ever done is actually a relatively recent thing, the last 100 years, and it was of Judith Kaplan, who is here in the picture. The one on the right is her original bat mitzvah, and it was done within the Reconstructionist movement, which is a very, very small movement only that exists in America. Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan actually came from the conservative movement and created the Reconstructionist denomination. And his daughter, in March 18th, 1922, was the first girl to have a bat mitzvah, which is insane, in my opinion, because it's so recent, first of all. And secondly, because literally all denominations have a bat mitzvah now, meaning it's not only just non-Orthodox denominations. Within Orthodoxy, too, it is very obvious and clear that you're going to be doing something for a girl who reaches age 12. No matter what that looks like, even if it's just a party and celebration that you're going to be doing, and the girl doesn't even say a Dvar Torah, a sermon, whatever, it's obvious that you're going to be celebrating in some way. Again, even if it's just a kiddush in shul, okay? It could be very minimal, but there is an expectation that a celebration is going to be done. And I purposely put here photos of a variety of different denominations to stress that and bring that forth. So with Orthodoxy, it really is just a party. You might have the component, an idea of having a Dvar Torah, a sermon that's related to the portion of the week that you were born in. Sometimes people do a mitzvah project. Sometimes people will do, again, something more personal and creative to mark this special transition. I will say for people who are, a little bit more modern Orthodox, or growing up, I was like liberal Orthodox. So personally, I did read the Torah in front of women. I did want to do some sort of religious ceremony personally because I really connected to that. And it's become more and more common. But again, it is a personal choice. I went to many girls' bat mitzvah parties, and that's all it was. Just a lavish birthday party. But I've been to also ceremonies that make religious significance for those girls, and they're definitely within the Orthodox world. Again, more open, more modern, but definitely something that's become more and more common as time goes on. Then you have within the other denominations and movements, you have very similar to a bar mitzvah, that they'll have an aliyah, that they'll read from the Torah, that they'll lead services. And it is important for me to know that often the week of their actual birthday and the week that they're celebrating the bar bat mitzvah do not coincide necessarily, because in these synagogues, you just want to book your bar bat mitzvah, 2 or 3 years in advance. You just choose whatever week is available, and that's it. But at the same time, regarding just what it looks like and what that ceremony could be, it's very similar to what I discussed regarding bar mitzvah and what the boys experience. And finally, of course, you have just the party itself. And some people just do that and won't do any religious component, no matter what their background is, which is similar to boys too. Sometimes boys won't do the religious component, but I just wanted to explain and express what are the obligations and expectations for a bar mitzvah. So you don't have that expectation in Orthodox movement for girls, and there's again that flexibility and choice, which we saw also with the birth ceremonies as well. So with that brings us to the end of bar and bat mitzvah, and the end of this section, basically.